So welcome everybody to this latest COP26 warm-up event that the DEI are putting on this month. I'm Simon Hogg. I'm the former director of the Durham Energy Institute, and it's my pleasure today to introduce to you Tony Quinn, who's going to be chairing the session and master of ceremonies for the event that we put on for you today. So I'm going to hand over now to Tony and let him introduce himself and the panel and take us forward through the meeting. Tony.
Great. Thanks very much, Simon, and it's a great pleasure to be here this afternoon in this build-up to COP26, and in particular, contribution that offshore wind can play in decarbonising our electricity system, but also regenerating our economy. So my name is Tony Quinn. I go by various titles, but I think for this seminar, I'm the Test and Validation Director for Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult based in Blythe. But I have a dual role. I'm also recently appointed Chair of Energy Coast, which is the cluster organisation for the Northeast, representing various companies and research institutes and regional government for our northeast region between Blythe and Teesside. I've got a long tradition in the power industry, and I'm really interested to see how we drive towards electrifying and decarbonising our current heat and transport systems. And I'd like to introduce a very esteemed panel that joins us this afternoon, starting with Ben Sykes, who's Vice President for UK Offshore at Ørsted, one of the world leaders in offshore wind, co-chairs the Offshore Wind Industry Council, and indeed has been in the energy sector for over 30 years. Benj led the negotiations on the government and industry's offshore wind sector deal a couple of years ago. And also Louise Smith, a director of Aura. This is an innovation centre at Bridgehead near Hull, based at the heart of the Humber. And whilst a linguist by training, she spent most of her career in industry on large energy projects and has a particular interest in soft risk management. She joined in Aura in 2016 and has been building its brand and reputation ever since. And Simon did a brief introduction to himself, but he holds the Ørsted Chair in Renewable Energy at Durham University, been head of engineering since 2017 at Durham, and as he mentioned, was the executive director between 2014 and 2017. A fellow of the Institution of Mechanical Engineers, as I am, and he's leading Energy Coast's Innovation Group, and is also chair of Aura's Research and Development and Innovation Strand on steering group. So the plan for today is that we'll hear from each of our panelists, a little intention is to have a 5-minute presentation from each. I'm happy to receive questions either in the chat function. Perhaps if you could let the speaker get to the end of their talk. But if you do want to engage, then please raise your hand and I'll try and engage with some questions and answers at the end of each of at the end of all of the presentations. So without further ado, I think just as a brief introduction to the session, what I'm really keen to concentrate on today is the role that innovation plays in our landscape, and particularly the importance of collaboration. And in that regard, I'd like to invite Ben to open this session and really talk about Ørsted's partnership with both Durham and Aura, and particularly perhaps the history of the Ørsted and Durham University partnership. So over to you, Ben. Thank you.
Tony, thanks very much for that introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. As Tony said, I've got a number of hats that I wear, none of them on today, but I guess as well as working with Ørsted, and I'll touch on what we're up to in terms of innovation, I suppose built a lot of my career around collaboration outside of my workplace, if you like, and I think this is such an important theme. It's a great opportunity to be able to debate it today, and I hope we'll generate a lot of questions out of the short talks that we all give. I just got a few slides. No webinar goes without a few slides, so I'm hoping I can get this working for everybody. So, Ørsted, I suspect many of you will know who we are, but just as a little reminder, as Tony says, we are a big offshore renewables, but also onshore renewables developer. We are the biggest developer and owner-operator of offshore wind in the world, but we also now have a fast-growing onshore business, and onshore wind, that is, and solar, and also bioenergy, also energy balancing infrastructure, and a hydrogen business that we have probably a dozen projects now on the way across Europe. So we have a vision to create a world that runs entirely on green energy. That is a big mission, and I think the collaboration theme is absolutely central to our ability to deliver that. As Tony mentioned, the important theme for today is innovation and collaboration around innovation. So these are some of the themes around innovation that Ørsted is involved in and proud of, and I just wanted to quickly touch on them. So one is we have been consistently a first mover in new wind turbine technology. Pretty much all the turbine models that have come onto the market over the last decade, I think we've probably been one of, if not the first developer to deploy them commercially, and that will include GE's turbine, which we hope we can get in the water in the US before Dogger Bank does it in the North Sea, but let's see. Nice to have that competition. Foundation design, another really important area of innovation, a lot of cost, a lot of metal, and a lot of carbon embedded in our foundation. So really important that we find ways to innovate around that. And we've been very much driving the XL and the XXL monopile, as well as suction bucket jackets and other technologies. And we're now very, very focused on floating wind and the foundation designs and, if you like, archetypes that are going to be most successful there. It's not just about kit, it's also about how you put it in. So a big area of innovation for us is around installation concepts. We know, broadly speaking, we're still building wind farms, bottom fixed wind farms, the way we did 10 years ago. But in fact, when you drill in, there's a lot that's changed. There's a lot of innovation going on, a lot of new technology. Tony and the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult are doing a lot around that. But again, an important area where collaboration with the innovation community and the academic community is vital. Maturing the supply chain, there's key. I think it's important to note here that innovation is central to a successful supply chain. This is all about cutting edge technology, cutting edge high value manufacturing, and that doesn't come without a lot of innovation. And then, last but by no means least, we've got digitalization. We all like to talk about it. We all have perhaps slightly different views, and we'll maybe unpack that in the Q&A. And of course, collaboration with universities and research institutions, not just with Durham, not just in the UK, but globally. And we have a very strong portfolio of partnerships with institutions. We're very picky who we work with. So, we get a lot of opportunities to partner. And I think our long-standing relationship with Durham is testament to the value that we and Durham have created through this. Just drilling a little bit further, and this hopefully is interesting for you in terms of what we're focusing on for innovation. These are our 6 roadmaps. I'm not going to talk about them in detail. You can see what they are, but really, our objective here is to ensure that we're always pushing the next, if you like, basket of cutting edge technologies into our wind farm. So it's very important that we get down the cost curve through learning, but it's also important we get down the cost curve by trying new things in every single wind farm that we build. And if I look back over the history of the 14 or so that we built in the UK, we can see that everyone has brought new innovation in. So this has been absolutely absolutely vital. In terms of collaboration then, I'm just picking out a couple. I'll start on the right, the offshore wind sector deal. That is, I think, a really important example of industry collaboration and also industry government collaboration. And it's maybe slightly off topic, but I do think it's a really important theme to stress in the context of COP26 in particular. Governments need to look at how we've worked as a partnership between industry and government to drive this sector forward. And of course, innovation and academic liaison and partnering is a really important part of that. Louise, I won't steal your thunder and talk about the clusters that we have crystallized, if you like, catalyzed rather, in the sector deal, but that is an important theme that we'll unpack in the next hour. It's been very important, and I think it's been a real driver for the sector's growth and the ambition that both industry and government have now for the future of offshore wind in the UK. The other thing, of course, is our strong partnership with Durham. And this is something that I've personally been involved in since 2009 when we set up the Energy Institute. I'll go, perhaps in the Q&A, I can unpack a little bit of the detail in that. But we have, as Simon said, we are sponsoring Simon as an Ørsted professor, but we're also doing a lot. We're providing bursaries for our master's students. We are doing a lot of, I think, cutting edge R&D together with the engineering department and through the Energy Institute. It's been a very fruitful partnership, and one that now is working on a very significant portfolio of PhDs that, whilst they're not going to deliver in the short term, I think they give us some real insights into where we're going to go in the medium term. So that partnership has been hugely valuable, and I think we bring complementary things, and collaboration is all about each party bringing what they can best bring to the table and acknowledging the other participants' expertise. So I think it's something I'd like to unpack further, but in the interest of time, and I know other people will be watching the clock thinking, when am I going to get to speak? I will stop there. Just a little plug for our sustainability ambition before I finish, though. We have set an ambition to be carbon neutral by 2025 as a business, but more challenging, I think, by 2040, our entire supply chain also carbon neutral. And if you think we use big ships, we use crew transfer vessels, there's a lot that we need to do here to truly be carbon neutral, but we have a route to that. More recently, we've just announced a complete ban on landfilling of wind turbine blades. We're working hard, and again, collaboration with universities is going to be key to finding solutions to how do we upcycle blades as they come to the end of their useful life. And for me, a very important thing, our commitment to building biodiversity net positive projects in the future, which is vital if we're going to deliver sustainable oceans as well as sustainable energy. So I'll stop there. I think that's probably a bit of a teaser for what we can talk about in the Q&A.
Thank you very much, Benj, for your introductory teaser. Great insight into the perspective of Ørsted and the relationship with Durham University. And I think Louise is going to continue that theme. As I mentioned, Louise is director of Aura, and very, very much collaboration, I think, at the heart of your thinking too, Louise. I think you're going to talk about your specific relationships with Durham University. Thank you.
Yes, well, good afternoon. And yes, so as has been mentioned, I'm the director of Aura, which is an initiative led by the University of Hull, right at the heart of the Humber. Now, I've been with Aura about 5 years, pretty much since the beginning, and I now lead a strong team of about 17 of us. My background is oil and gas, big projects, cutting edge projects, and I must say that that is my passion, doing something new, innovative, and not following a well-trodden path. I've never been able to, which to my detriment at times, I think. So Aura is a collaboration. It's a collaboration between industry, mainly Ørsted and Siemens Gamesa in the Humber, but some key universities, Durham, of course, Sheffield, and latterly Newcastle. But also, it's really important that we work with the local and regional governments, so the local authorities and the LEP, and of course, organisations like the Offshore Renewable Energy Catapult. And it's by bringing all those different organisations together that I think is the key to success. So why was Aura started? Really to ensure that the region benefited from the advent of offshore wind. It didn't happen overnight. We stand on the shoulders of many who worked hard, mainly to attract big industry, which was then a catalyst for the rest. As one of the lead organisations in the Humber cluster, we're a bit different from the other clusters. There are 8 in the country for those who know a bit more about it, because we're led by a university. And we're organised around, if you imagine a Venn diagram with 3 interconnected and overlapping circles. So the research, development and innovation strand, which is the one we're talking about today, but we think also the people aspect, the skills, of course, where we have our roots in a university, but also the industry engagement and enterprise, which is what the Innovation Centre is mainly focused on at the moment. Or it is about collaboration. And this is a clear characteristic of the offshore wind industry, which really excites me. It's different from other industries that I've worked on. They seek true collaboration, and long may that continue. It's about bringing different people together and different organizations. And our strong belief is that if you collaborate well, you innovate well. You probably know the expression, 2 heads are better than one, which reflects the intuition that people working together are more likely to come up with a better decision than they would if they were working alone. And the same can be said of organizations. So bringing different organizations together who think differently and have different expertise has got to be better than working in silos. And particularly for a brand new industry where innovation is absolutely key, and lay on top of that the effects of COVID and the economic destruction, this is going to be the only way forward. If you remember, less than 5 years ago, the industry was charging 165 per megawatt hour. That has tumbled right down, and I believe, Benji, you'll correct me, it's below 50. It's going to be below 50 in the next year or so. Our partnership with Durham's Energy Institute is absolutely key, and it goes back to the very beginning of Aura. Indeed, Simon, as he mentioned, chairs our research, development and innovation strand. And being together on something like that really makes it happen in practice. And it's a key relationship. And I think key to be forming the supercluster, as Simon likes to call it, and I'm sure he will tell you more about that, which will be bringing the Humber and the Northeast clusters working more closely together. Our partnership with Durham has been very fruitful. You know, the saying success breeds success. Well, it really does. It started with the EPSRC Prosperity Partnership in operations and maintenance. And when people come together and work and they get to know each other and build relationships, that can only lead to more success. And then the Offshore Renewable Energy Supergen Fund, and finally our Aura CDT, which is led by the University of Hull and our first centre for doctoral training, of which we're inordinately proud. I think universities working together in the business, not just big industry, and of course that's crucial, but also the smaller companies have a unique role in building back better. And the government's Green Industrial Revolution is witness to that. It's where innovation will come from. So we think that SMEs are key to this as well. Benj mentioned the supply chain and greening that. We need to help them as well. It's not just about big industry. And I think universities have a unique convening power that we need to use for the good. As anchor institutions in our regions, we have a moral obligation to do more for society than just sort of higher level skills. I think to finish, the offshore wind industry has been operating differently than some of the industries I have experience of in the past. And my plea is that we continue to do that and don't forget our roots as we continue to look for better collaboration on newer, wider renewable energy projects so that we can innovate together. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Louise, for that. And I think you can see some emerging themes already with Benj and Louise in terms of innovation and collaboration. I think I'm going to continue that theme. So I've been invited to say a few words as chair of Energy Coast and the ambition that we have to secure long-term value for the region from the burgeoning offshore wind industry. So I would just like to take this opportunity to talk very briefly about how I see a successful industrial strategy emerging from offshore wind. It invariably involves helping the supply chain to strengthen and giving it the support that it needs. And I'll return to that theme in a second. Innovation, as been mentioned several times, drives competitive advantage in any strong cluster. And that applies not only to our regional advantage or our national advantage, but indeed to our global competitive advantage. And remember, we have first mover advantage in this market, and there's a great potential in the global market of around about, I think current forecasts are around about 250 gigawatts. And of course, skills are really important. If you haven't got the skills to take advantage of that growth and opportunity, then it makes inward investment or attracting inward investment even more challenging. So there are the three pillars on which any successful industrial strategy, I think, is built. And I think with the pull of the North Sea and the investment in our electrical infrastructure that's been made, we've got a huge opportunity to take advantage of that with Dogger Bank, A, B, and C, Sophia, Hornsea, Triton Knoll, relatively speaking, on our doorstep, providing that market pull for innovation and supply of materials and expertise. And in the Northeast, I think we've got a strong collaborative culture anyway. The Energy Coast comprises all of the necessary protagonists for a successful cluster. The ports from the Blythe, the Tyne, the Weir and the Tees, and now, as Louise mentioned, I think collaboration between Northeast and Humber will become increasingly important, particularly as DIT have been so successful in attracting major inward investment to our shores through SEA in large fabrications at the Humber, a Korean monopile manufacturer, and LM on Teesside in blade manufacture. These are really significant inward investments, added to the investments already being made by Ørsted, RWE, and Equinor in O&M bases. And we did a survey of our supply chain companies in the Northeast, and already 200 companies participate in offshore wind, employing, they think, around about 4,500 people in this space, and all have ambition and opportunity to double that figure within the next 5 years. So there's a huge, there's a huge opportunity and huge potential for the growth of the supply chain. And I think we've got one of the most innovative supply chains with real expertise, particularly in subsea engineering in our region. And we're working out how to support that and how to leverage that will be really, really important. Involvement of UK export finance credit agencies will be really, really important in really securing that long-term value, but also innovation. I think these inward investments move us into a dimension where we're no longer trying to solve the technology problems that Louise mentioned around lowering the cost of energy, but now how to industrialize offshore wind, how to move from our existing 8 to 10 gigawatts to 40 gigawatts by 2030, and perhaps even 100 gigawatts by 2050. So attracting inward investment, strengthening our infrastructure, strengthening and aligning our skills provision to meet the needs of industry, and of course, collaboration. They're all key themes to making a success of the opportunity that we have before us. So thanks for that opportunity to give my perspective on life from Energy Coast. And at this moment, I'd like to hand back to Simon, who's going to, I think, perhaps embellish a little bit more about their Durham University's relationships with both Aura and Ørsted.
Okay, thanks, Tony. Thanks very much. I'm just going to try and share one slide with you all now. So hopefully, I can just click on full screen. Right, I just clicked. Do that again. I clicked one too many times there. I think I know how to do this by now. You're not seeing the slide, Tony. Is that okay?
No, not yet. It's coming through now. Yeah.
Is that okay? We'll go. We'll go with that. Shout at me in the chat if it's not where it needs to be. So, yeah, welcome everybody. So the event is all about partnership working, and as you've heard, our relationship with Ørsted goes back to 2011 when the chair that I now hold was first funded here at Durham University, and that relationship with Ørsted has led into our involvement initially with Aura, and as Louisa said, we've been involved with Aura pretty much since its inception now, some 5-6 years ago. And then as a result of Aura and the sector deal coming along in 2018, Aura was used as a case study within the sector deal as to what a local cluster might look like. They don't all look like that. As Louisa said, Aura is the only one that's university led, so it's different from the others in that respect, but at least it formed a benchmark for what clusters might look like. So here in the northeast, that then led to Energy Coast. So Energy Coast has existed for many years prior to the sector deal as a local business development and networking organisation, and has stepped up after the sector deal to become the northeast cluster. So the opportunity here, as I see it, is Durham University and the DEI. We have engagement with both Aura and Energy Coast, and they are very different animals. So Aura, as Louisa said, being university led, I think it's fair to say the research and development strand of Aura is the one that's was first out the starting blocks, really, because it comes from led by a university. That's the easiest of the strands of what a cluster should be doing to get active with. And really the skills development and the supply chain and business development sides of that are something that Aura is very active in, but have come along after really the big lead we got with the innovation side of things that has led to our involvement in some big project wins like the Prosperity Partnership project, and more recently the Aura Centre of Doctoral Training as well, which Louise alluded to earlier. So in the case of Energy Coast, then we already have a very well developed supply chain and engagement with local companies. That's the real strength of Energy Coast at its starting point. And opposite to Aura, developing the innovation strand of Energy Coast is something that's lagging behind the business development side of the Energy Coast operations. So we launched the innovation group a little under a year ago now. We had a bit of a COVID delay. We've had a fantastic response from the membership, and you can see so the companies whose logos are on the slide in front of you there now, they are companies who expressed an interest in being founder members of the Energy Coast Innovation Group leadership team. So all of these companies have representation on the leadership team. We meet 3 times a year, and it's really that team that looks after the strategic planning and the strategic priorities of the innovation group, which lead to the events and the initiatives that we've been running for just under a year now, that I think when I look at the names on the call, some of you have been engaging with already. And you can see amongst those members, we've got a very wide spectrum of membership. So we've got everything from a major OEM at the bottom of the slide there in GE, up through but local supply chain companies, Tecmar, SMD mentioned there, engagement from both the Northeast LEP and from the Tees Valley Combined Authority, and then also strong links with other innovation institutions, not just Aura. We've also got the Catapult there and Teesside University. So that is the innovation group. What is so exciting about this is really the graphic. You can see that I work in a university now, so the hand drawn graphic on the right hand side of my slide there which is my attempt to really put a picture to the supercluster in its simplest form. So if you look at that picture now, you've got Aura operating in the Humber, Energy Coast operating in the northeast there, and Teesside really sandwiched between the two, with all the great stuff that's going on Teesside around decarbonising industry, hydrogen, energy storage, these sort of things, which local universities like Durham and Teesside and also Hull are well tapped into. So in addition to that grouping, we've got Hornsea, first phase of which already fully operational, the world's first gigawatt scale offshore wind farm developed by Ørsted there, already operating with the cables coming ashore in that Aura stroke Energy Coast region. And we're soon to have Dogger Bank, another gigawatt scale wind farm with energy coming ashore within our region from that offshore wind farm. So we've got the world's first, definitely the world's first, and in terms of Dogger Bank, maybe the second, I don't know, Ben knows better than I, gigawatt scale wind farm here in the region, coming into the areas that are spanned by Aura and by Energy Coast. And then if you look at beyond that at factories, you've got the Siemens Gamesa factory, £320 million investment in Hull for the manufacturing and assembly plant there for offshore wind turbines, and now LMGE following suit, having recently announced that they're going to build their wind turbine manufacturing and assembly plant on Teesside in the region. So huge inward investment there. We've got the Catapult Centre, so Tony's Gaff, the Catapult Centre itself with all of its experimental facilities up in Blythe at the north of that region. Ørsted on the south bank of the Humber with their operations and maintenance base in Grimsby. Equinor have announced and are now mobilising on building their operations and maintenance base on the Port of Tyne. British Volt building the battery gigafactory up at Blythe as well. So there's an awful lot going on in this region, and I would argue unrivaled anywhere else in the world. I don't think there's anywhere else in the world that has the opportunity to really have a true centre in all aspects of offshore wind than this combination of what I've just gone through there. So that is what I call the supercluster. I think it's a great opportunity for us here in the northeast and in the wider region. It's all about partnership, working, and that's why I'm excited about it, and why I've put my own time and effort and energy, along with the great support I've had from the DEI, in forming the innovation group of Energy Coast and trying to do our best for the region from that body. Okay, so I'll hand you back to Tony now for start the panel session.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Simon. And actually, our first question develops that theme more away from regional collaboration to international collaboration. And Benj already mentioned that hopes to be the first owner-operator to make use of the GE Haliade X turbine on one of their US projects. So very specifically, how important is UK-US collaboration in research to a company like Ørsted, which is operating in both markets? And I think I've got to take the opportunity to pick up on your answer once you've completed.
Yeah. So how important is collaboration across boundaries? Yeah, I mean, it's essential. We don't think, we'll do this thing in this market and this other thing in this other market. This is a global industry. It's an industry that, as we've all talked about, has a lot of innovating to get done. And we will work across boundaries and with multiple jurisdiction collaboration to solve things. I mean, I don't want to go into specifics. There's quite a bit going on in terms of cross, if you like, multinational collaboration. And I think there are some good models we've developed in the UK, be that Aura, be that some of the stuff we're seeing in the cluster. These are the kinds of things that definitely lend themselves to a sort of international collaboration platform. So there's no doubt that, like the industry itself, we need to be collaborating on a very international basis.
Thanks, Ben. And I guess from my perspective, I talked about what drives competitive advantage, and ultimately you've got to start with a USP. And it's very difficult for us to in this country to be excellent at everything. No one country or one region can be brilliant at everything. It's just such a broad spectrum of challenges that at the global scale, or the wide broader scale, net zero present across hydrogen, transport, heat, carbon capture, offshore wind. So you've got to try and hone down and concentrate on what you're going to be good at, and therefore that means that engenders the need for collaboration cross-boundary, because I think the US will be good at things that we're not good at, and therefore hopefully be complementary. What I think it is really, really important is that we invest in research infrastructure. So I think it's the first time that ORE Catapult and Blythe has been referred to as Tony's gaff, but I'll take that as a compliment, Simon, that we've got really important strategic infrastructure in Blythe. But in order to maintain that competitive edge and advantage, investment not only in port infrastructure but research infrastructure is really, really important. Really, really, really vitally important. The US are pretty good at it through organizations like NREL, who, Alan, I know you have a long-standing relationship with, but it's also key. It's really important for our government to have the same level of ambition to keep us at the cutting edge.
You guys.
And we've got another question coming in there. Back to Benj, and this is I think related to the circular economy, Benj, yeah. And particularly around turbines. I think maybe specifically blades. Bit off topic from the main themes, but wanted to ask what your perspective on recycling or
no, absolutely, Tony, and Ailsa, thank you for your question. It's a really important one. So we don't have the answers, and I think one of the characteristics of Orsted is we set ambitions like our biodiversity net positive ambition, actually, which we don't really have all the answers to, and this is as much a call to action to the community that innovates around this as it is that we've got all the answers and we're implementing it. And that one thing I would just draw as a parallel is about 9 years ago, our chief exec said we're going to get the cost of offshore wind down to €100 a megawatt hour by 2020. We didn't know how, and everyone poo-pooed it at the time, actually. And here we are, as Louise has said, well past that milestone. So I think it's important to set ambitions before you have the answers. So what we're going to do, we're not taking down a lot of blades at the moment. We know that will accelerate for us. But as we do take blades down, we will be storing them until we have a solution, because we don't want to see them going into landfill. And I very much hope that this sort of ambition that we've set will be a call to action for everyone who can innovate this space, because it's not an easy piece of equipment to repurpose or to recycle. We have repurposed blades on the wind farm that we have decommissioned, but there is a lot more work to do, and it's not just for Orsted, it's for the whole sector to build a sustainable future. On your point, Tony, that it is blades, that's because pretty much all the rest of the turbine is already recyclable.
Great, thank you. And maybe I could draw Louise into the discussion. I just wondered, Louise, how you saw the offshore wind sector deal. How has that helped encourage collaborative working between industry and research organizations and universities?
I think it's set it out clearly, probably more clearly than the other sector deals, she says proudly, of which there are only 10, because we've now moved away from the industrial strategy and we're into Build Back Better. But I think probably for me anyway, it was the first time that it was clearly set out that in order to pull down the big research funding that government has promised, the 2.4 to rising to 3% GDP, is that you have to collaborate. So therefore you have to get industry and universities, different universities, not just one, together to to collaborate on the prosperity funds and the supergens and the CDTs. So I think that's one big aspect. But I think an important part, which touches on the conversation you just talked about, and the blades, a lot of innovation will also come from the smaller companies, and not just the shiny SMEs that we all like to laud, but the small regional ones who perhaps haven't quite understood their role in greening the supply chain. You know, Ørsted, Benj at the beginning set out that they are going to be expecting their supply chain to be entirely green. That's the only way that they're going to be a company that runs entirely on green energy. That depends on the complete supply chain. And I think there's a lot of focus on the top end and not enough on the middle. And that's something that we're working hard at through the Aura Innovation Centre, this building that is directed at SMEs. And the University of Hull has been recently quite successful in pulling down regional funding from government to help with that. So I think there are different aspects to this issue. And I think that's an important part that we mustn't forget. It won't be directly linked to Ørsted and Siemens Gamesa, but universities have a big role in catalyzing that, and it will be the incremental innovations that will make the difference in the bioeconomy and in low carbon. And I think we need to remember them and work with them to help them.
Thanks, Louise. Simon, were you looking to come in there, or?
No, I agree with everything that Louise has said there. Obviously, I think the offshore wind sector deal has really was the catalyst that's obviously led to the opportunity that I see for us in and around the region that I've just spent a bit of time talking about in my previous presentation. You know, if it wasn't for the sector deal, we wouldn't have the cluster here in the northeast, and we wouldn't have this great opportunity built on the collaborations that we've been developing over the last decade or so when we start with Ørsted, that's now come to the point where we've got this great opportunity moving forward.
And I'd like to expand the discussion a little bit, perhaps beyond offshore wind and integration with hydrogen. A very esteemed question from Tony Roskillian, but it's a really pertinent one. What do we think about the I think in my opening remarks, I talked about priority seems to be to electrify wherever possible, and particularly heat and transport. But of course, hydrogen will play a really important role. What are the prospects for integrating hydrogen production with offshore wind? And perhaps Simon, I'll start with you on that one, and then Ben.
Yeah, because, well, even if you electrify everything, you're still going to need some form of storage medium, because, you know, if our grid is supplied with large amounts of renewable energy, principally wind and photovoltaics, with the variability that comes with that, it's mandatory that when we get to the scales that we're talking about, you know, forget 2050, even by 2030, you know, we really are going to need significant amounts of energy storage on the network, and hydrogen has emerged in the last sort of couple of years really as the most potentially anyway the most flexible and the most important vector, for want of a better word, in order to achieve that. So already you know, you have companies like Ørsted, and Benj can talk to this with much more authority than I can, but they're already investing money in pilot and demonstrator type operations. So they have the Gigastack project on the south bank of the Humber, where they're using green hydrogen that's basically taking electricity from Ørsted's offshore wind farms in the North Sea, creating hydrogen through electrolyzers, and then using that to decarbonize an industrial process as part of that. They've got a similar project going on in Denmark, where the green hydrogen has been used for transport purposes. So already this is happening at developer level, not just at university level. Tony, who's asked the team, who's asked the question, obviously he and his team and his collaborations with Teesside, he's very much looking at all the exciting opportunities connected to hydrogen at the university level. But it's already beyond that. You know, I think it's fair to say hydrogen is coming. There's big money behind it already, and I think it's going to be a big part of our energy system by the time we get to 2030, let alone what's going to happen beyond that.
Okay, thanks, Simon. Benj, anything?
Yeah, so I think Simon said a lot. And to Tony's question around integration, I think integration can mean lots of different things to different people, but I do think we're going to see hydrogen as being integral to the rollout of offshore wind. Integrated remains to be seen, but certainly at the scale of offshore wind that the UK will need to hit net zero, 100 plus gigawatts of offshore wind, we need to have the hydrogen infrastructure utilizing that power to manage a resilient grid, but also in order to exploit that very cheap electricity, clean electricity to produce green or renewable hydrogen. Whether that happens offshore, and if it does, whether that happens at turbines or at substations, how we ship it around from offshore to onshore, where we get our fresh water from, if we're doing it offshore, these are all questions that we're working on. And as well as the Gigastack project that Simon mentions, we've got, I think I mentioned about a dozen different hydrogen projects running across Europe, looking at different archetypes. They're all driven by offshore wind electrons, if you like. So the two are very much working hand in glove now. And I think there's huge opportunity. I didn't include it in my slides, but we can see that renewable hydrogen can reach cost competitiveness with traditional forms of steam methane reforming by the end of this decade, if not sooner. And we've seen that cost journey delivered on offshore wind. We're very confident we'll see it delivered in hydrogen. So it is going to be absolutely integral to offshore wind. Exactly what the architecture looks like, onshore, offshore, and how we then use the hydrogen, I think that still remains to be seen.
Thank you. And Louise, I could come to you with the same question, but I'm going to slightly change direction a little bit. There's a question come in about the important role that SMEs play in the ecosystem, and are we doing enough? Okay, we've talked a lot about engaging with big industry, large inward investments, large developers like Ørsted. What role do SMEs play in forums like Aura?
I think they're key. We have a big focus on them. In fact, we've just finished, we're doing the analysis now of a big low carbon survey of the SMEs in the Humber, of which we have, is it 99.9% of companies in the UK are SMEs, which are companies with less than 249 or 250 employees. So even if half those aren't industrial, that is a huge number, and we need to help them more. I think that they don't see their connection often to the industry, the new industries. I think, having been on a number of boards recently, they don't always understand what it means for them. But I think if we don't help them and engage with them, and I'm not saying it's going to be easy because it's very diverse, we're not going to meet our net zero targets, any of us. So I think it is difficult, and it's something we're really grappling with in the Humber. So this survey results will be able to help us focus on how we're going to do that, working with Ørsted and Siemens Gamesa and the other universities, and I hope that we will find new ways of doing that. A lot of it is down to communication, of course, but I think we need to work in new ways, and collaboration, say that word again, is key to that.
Thanks, Louise. And maybe I'll pick up on behalf of Energy Course, Tom, or maybe not. Maybe I'll pick up on behalf of ORE Catapult, because supporting SMEs is at the core of why Innovate UK fund organisations like the Catapult, and that's because I think we have one of the most febrile and innovative environments in SMEs, but we're not traditionally good at commercialising some of those ideas. And I think the beauty of organisations like Energy Course is that it provides that pull through to the end user for those innovations. So I talked a little bit at the beginning about supply chain support program. I'm really passionate about creating constructive supply chain support programs that help innovative products come to market in a shorter period of time. And I think energy clusters like Energy Course provide that ecosystem to allow that to happen. So I think they're really, really important to the ecosystem. And I guess, Ben, just coming back to you, Tom rather tantalizingly talks about OWIC aiming to include some SMEs on the council. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that or not.
Yeah, so I should just caveat my comments by the fact I actually passed the baton on to Danielle Lane at Vattenfall in December last year. So after 7 years of chairing OWIC, I'm delightfully relieved of that part of my duties. But yeah, I mean, it's a very important question. I think one of the things that we have talked about in the Industry Council is how do we engage SMEs? And I think there's two routes we do that. One is through having the CEO of the Catapult on the OWIC board. So Andrew Jameson sits there, and he's a very strong voice for the SME community from an innovation perspective. But we also have the CEO of Renewable UK, Dan McGrail, as it now is. So I think those two are very much speaking that voice of the SME community. There's definitely opportunities for doing more, and I suppose I would point to two of the work streams that came out of the sector. One is the clusters one, and Louise has spoken about that. And the other is that all the work that's going on in the supply chain, particularly through the Offshore Wind Growth Partnership, but also more widely through the supply chain work of the council. So there's quite a lot going on. I think the point about the council is it's not a sort of membership organisation that has hundreds of members sitting on the board. So it's not intended to become another trade association. It's very much trying to keep at that sort of principally the developers and the OEMs and one or two, if you like, primary voices from the supply chain, but not to broaden it out to skew that balance.
Thanks, Benj. And I think we're coming to the close, but we've got a really meaty question that I've sort of skipped around. And so I'm going to give you sort of a minute each or so, or as short as possible, just to be as succinct as possible. Around the implementation of renewables in the UK, it started with some delay when in comparison to Europe. What do we consider are the real barriers for the UK in, I guess, developing and then deploying new renewable technology? And Simon, how about I come to you first?
Yeah, I'm not sorry, Laura, but I'm not so sure I agree with the question, actually, or the comment. I think that one of the things we do very badly in the UK is shout about the good things. So I don't want to. I know most people on the call are already more aware than this than I am, but the UK has more offshore wind installed right now than any other country globally. We're the world leaders in that, and we should celebrate that fact. Yeah, it's true that, you know, Denmark will proudly say some years ago now that there were days when they generated 100% of their electricity from wind power, but that's because they're surrounded by Europe with well connected to the electricity grids of other countries nearby. They can take all of the inertia from their big coal burners and nuclear plants and use that to stabilise the grid in Denmark, whereas being an island nation as we are with a few interconnectors, we just can't do that here in the UK. So there are technical constraints that make it easier for other countries to switch to wind in particular than it is for the UK. But we're doing, in my opinion, a fantastic job. You know, we're retiring the coal burning plants faster than certainly somebody like me who was immersed in that industry more than 10 years ago, more than I ever would have imagined. I think we've got something like two of the large coal stations left operational now. We've got more than that still running that have been converted to biomass. Another big change. Photovoltaics is taking off within the UK. So I think we're doing a fantastic job, and we should shout about it more.
I've got Louise nodding. Do you want to give your perspective?
I absolutely agree. We're good at innovation. We're not so good at productivity, but we're very good at the ideas aspect. And you know, I've worked on two of the big carbon capture projects, and there is the myth that they're not technology ready. I got the permits and consents for Peterhead and then for Doncaster. These were industrial scale capital projects, and they were cut off at the knees because government didn't have the courage to invest. It was going to be expensive, so perhaps not the right time, but it annoys me when people say it wasn't technology ready. It was, This was BP and SSE behind it, and then again the same BP team that had left. So we are good at this stuff on an industrial scale. We just don't talk about it. We just get on with it. We are a bit slow to the, but we, you know, and we are one of the biggest countries. We have 66 million population. Look what we've managed to do with COVID, having been supposedly the laggers. Now we're leading the world in vaccination. I think it sometimes takes us a bit to get going, but we're good at this stuff.
Thank you, Louise. And Benj, I'm going to add a little curveball into you. You can talk a little bit about the barriers, but there's a good question in there. I'm paraphrasing, but it says industry and universities seem odd bedfellows. How do you make it successful collaboration?
So to answer that question, it's by talking and it's by understanding what each of you brings to the table. I think we've, you know, our relationship with Durham is a real proof point that when we bring our, if you like, on the ground, well, in the sea experience, and we couple that with the innovation and academic capabilities of Durham, we see a match, perhaps not made in heaven, but a very successful match, I would say. So I think not such odd bedfellows. We have to be realistic as a business about the timeframes that we will extract value out of these partnerships and relationships, because, you know, we are building wind farms now, and the work that we do with Durham and other academic institutions is on a much longer time scale. But it is absolutely valuable to us. That's why we do it. Coming back to the other point around what are the barriers. So the barriers probably in the UK right now, acknowledging, as others have said, we're world leaders, and quite right that we make more noise about that. I think the biggest barrier now is figuring out where we're going to put it all. Yeah,
great. And perhaps that's a good note to end on. I don't know how I can summarize beyond the importance of innovation to securing long-term value for the UK, the importance of collaboration, and the importance of inward investment in all its forms. But there's a huge opportunity in this industrialization phase of offshore wind, and I think we've got all of the great ingredients along the East Coast to take advantage of that opportunity. And I think you've heard a lot of that about that this afternoon. I'd like to thank you very much for your attendance and your attention over the last 60 minutes. And I think I've got to hand back perhaps to Simon just to close off and bring to your attention the forthcoming events in Durham's COP26 programme.
Thanks very much, Tony. So just two church notices right at the end from me. So this is the third of this series of talks. So two more to come. So next week, 23rd of June, 4 till 5 p.m. So that one later in the afternoon. We've got a talk by Janie Ling Ching on hydrogen transport, the technologies and challenges around using hydrogen for transportation. So very topical to what we've been talking about today. And then finally, towards the end of the month, 30th of June, 2 till 3 in the afternoon, this one, just a transition. Another panel session like today's, this time chaired by Simone Abraham from the Anthropology Department here at Durham University. And the topic there will be a discussion around how COP26 can embed justice into the transition to a sustainable, decarbonised world. Okay, so thanks from me to all of you for attending this. Thanks to Tony for chairing it, and to the rest of the panel for all of their support.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.